November 1942. The Atlantic was black under a moonless sky. London slept quietly, but deep beneath Downing Street, in the War Cabinet's underground chambers, the tension was tangible. Maps of North Africa stretched across tables, each pin marking Axis and Allied positions. Winston Churchill stood over the maps, cigar glowing, smoke curling upward like a warning. "If this fails, everything fails," he muttered. Every officer in the room felt the weight of that statement. This was more than a military operation. It was a gamble on the fate of the Mediterranean, and perhaps all of Europe. Across the Atlantic, General Dwight D. Eisenhower studied intelligence reports in Washington. Detailed photographs, intercepted communications, and French troop movements in Algeria and Morocco filled his desk. Rommel, the Desert Fox, had been striking relentlessly in Libya and Tunisia. His Afrika Corps pushed British forces back, exploiting speed and surprise. Failure in North Africa could collapse the Allies' Mediterranean strategy and threaten southern Europe. Eisenhower knew one man could tilt the scales: George S. Patton. Bold, aggressive, unpredictable, capable of turning risk into lightning. Yet Patton's temperament worried politicians. Eisenhower understood he needed exactly this combination of genius and audacity. The operation was code-named Operation Torch, and its goal was deceptively simple: land Allied forces in French North Africa, secure key ports, and establish a foothold against the Axis. But the mission was perilous. French North Africa was controlled by Vichy France, officially neutral but prepared to resist. Coastal artillery, infantry, and tanks could make the first landings deadly. One misstep could escalate into disaster, politically and militarily. Every moment was a razor's edge. On the night of November 7, 1942, the Atlantic was restless. Eisenhower stood aboard his command ship, watching dark waves ripple under convoy lights. Every shadow could conceal a German U-boat. Every crest of water could hide coastal artillery ready to fire. Failure would not just cost lives, it could change the course of the war. Patton prepared near Casablanca. Calm externally, a storm of strategy raged inside him. Officers whispered about his intensity, his ability to visualize battlefields and anticipate enemy movements. Patton's mind was as sharp as his tanks. Even a small delay or mistake could cost thousands of lives and jeopardize the Mediterranean campaign. Churchill studied maps silently. Every mile of coastline, every French port, every Axis reaction weighed heavily on him. Reports of troop movements, intelligence updates, and potential German reinforcements streamed in constantly. One miscalculation could expose the invasion before it began. "This is a gamble," he said quietly, "but one we cannot refuse. Failure is not an option." The gravity of history pressed on every officer present. Before dawn on November 8th, the first Allied ships neared the Moroccan and Algerian coasts. Soldiers crouched in landing crafts, gripping rifles, faces pale in moonlight. Every wave might conceal death. Every shadow could hide artillery ready to fire. The Vichy French were divided in loyalty, unpredictable, and potentially deadly. Suspense hung over the landing like a storm. The first beach landings met resistance. Coastal batteries fired into the waves. French soldiers defended towns cautiously but decisively. Patton's strategy was critical. Tanks, infantry, and artillery moved with precision, inching forward under fire. Inch by inch, the Allies gained ground. The first foothold in North Africa was being claimed, but the outcome remained uncertain. Every man knew history was being written that night. By November 10th, Casablanca had fallen, Patton's maneuvers forced key Vichy French commanders to surrender. Eisenhower now had a secure bridgehead linking Morocco and Algeria, opening the path for the E to Akifi. Next phase, a push east toward Tunisia to confront Rommel's Afrika Korps. Every victory carried new challenges. Every movement required perfect coordination, precise timing, and nerves of steel. The psychological dimension was as crucial as the fighting. Patton knew the Vichy French were uncertain in loyalty. His strategy went beyond force. It relied on convincing French commanders that resistance was futile, surrender was safer, and collaboration with the Allies was inevitable. Inch by inch, city by city, the Allies advanced. Each maneuver was calculated and suspense-filled. Churchill monitored the operation from London, following reports intently. Eisenhower's decisions, Patton's maneuvers, and French reactions all determined the next steps in Europe. North Africa had become a chessboard, with lives, strategy, and history as pieces. Axis forces scrambled. Rommel realized the scale of the landings. Reinforcements moved toward Tunisia, but the speed and precision of Allied forces kept them just ahead. Torch was the prelude to a larger strategy, a decisive push into Europe. The desert stretched endlessly, hiding dangers and opportunities alike. Casablanca, Oran, and Algiers fell under Allied control. Political tension remained. French administrations wavered between loyalty to Vichy France and survival under the Allies. Patton exploited uncertainty, combining speed, force, and negotiation to secure compliance without unnecessary bloodshed. Streets once tense with potential violence now tentatively accepted Allied authority, though suspicion lingered. Torch did not end with landings. Logistics were a nightmare. Eisenhower coordinated supply chains, troop movements, and communications to maintain momentum. Patton struck unpredictably, destabilizing enemy lines and preventing Rommel from regaining control. The Afrika Korps faced a disciplined, agile, and psychologically clever opponent. Torch established Allied control of North Africa, but suspense remained. Tunisia awaited. Rommel's counterattacks were inevitable. Each day was a gamble, each success fragile, each step forward laying the groundwork for the next challenge. The desert was both ally and enemy, shaping history itself. The next phase of Operation Torch required advancing eastward toward Tunisia. Every movement had to be precise. Supplies, reinforcements, and communication lines stretched across hundreds of miles of desert. Any delay or miscalculation could give Rommel the chance to strike back with deadly efficiency. Eisenhower's staff worked around the clock, coordinating naval convoys, supply depots, and armored units. The desert was unforgiving, and mistakes could prove fatal. Patton pushed his forces forward with relentless determination. Tanks and infantry moved in tandem, scouting parties probing enemy positions, artillery providing cover. His decisions were swift and decisive, exploiting weaknesses in the Vichy French positions. Each engagement tested not only military strategy, but also the nerves and resolve of the soldiers. The desert wind carried dust and tension alike. Every mile of advance, a battle in its own right. The French forces in Algeria and Morocco were caught in a dilemma. Some commanders favored resistance to Vichy orders. Others saw the futility of opposing the Allies. Patton's reputation and rapid advance created a psychological pressure that forced surrenders before battles could even fully start. Each city captured without massive bloodshed was a victory of both strategy and psychological insight. Meanwhile, Rommel observed from Tunisia. Intelligence reports informed him of the Allied landings, but the speed of the Torch operation shocked even the Desert Fox. He realized that by the time he could organize a counterattack, the Allies might already have secured key ports and supply routes. His Afrika Korps had to adjust quickly, but the unpredictability of Patton's moves complicated planning. Casablanca, Oran, and Algiers became strong footholds. Supply ships arrived from Gibraltar. Armored units were moved inland, and radio communication lines connected all units. Eisenhower's meticulous planning ensured coordination at every level. But the tension remained. Any misstep, delayed convoy, or miscommunication could unravel months of planning. The desert kept its secrets, hiding dangers that could strike at any moment. The Allied forces consolidated their positions, preparing for the inevitable Axis counterattacks. Soldiers worked tirelessly to fortify positions, repair tanks, and maintain supply chains. Patton inspected units personally, understanding that morale and readiness could be as decisive as artillery fire. Every decision mattered, every day carried suspense, and every soldier knew that failure could have consequences far beyond the desert. In London, Churchill followed the developments with keen interest. Every report from Eisenhower and Patton was analyzed for strategy, implications, and timing. The political dimension was as critical as the battlefield. Cooperation among allies, the potential reaction of Vichy France, and German responses had to be anticipated. One wrong move could disrupt the entire campaign. Rommel finally began repositioning his forces in Tunisia. Intelligence indicated Allied strength in Morocco and Algeria, and he knew that swift action was necessary. But the Allies had already established beachheads, fortified positions, and a psychological advantage. Torch had not only delivered a military victory, but also struck a blow to enemy confidence. The suspense was far from over, as the next clash loomed just beyond the horizon. The desert campaigns required more than just strength. They demanded coordination. Logistics, supply lines, and communications were as decisive as tanks and artillery. Eisenhower monitored every ship, every convoy, and every unit to ensure the momentum of Torch was maintained. Patton's rapid advances left the Axis struggling to predict movements, creating a psychological edge that was as potent as firepower. Torch was a turning point in the Mediterranean campaign. By securing North Africa, the Allies created a strategic bridgehead for further operations, including the eventual invasion of Sicily and southern Europe. Every port captured, every surrender achieved, and every advance made the Axis position more precarious. But the war was far from over. Rommel was regrouping, and the desert still held dangers hidden from view. Every day in North Africa carried suspense. The Axis could strike unexpectedly, convoys could be delayed, and intelligence could be wrong. Soldiers remained alert, commanders planned relentlessly, and leaders like Eisenhower and Patton knew that every decision could tip the balance. Torch was not merely a landing, it was a gamble in the harshest environment imaginable. Despite the early successes, uncertainty lingered. The Allies had momentum, but the Axis forces were resilient. Rommel's Afrika Korps could not be underestimated. Each day, the desert revealed both opportunity and threat. Torch had achieved its primary objectives, but the campaign in Tunisia and beyond would test every Allied leader to their limits. Patton's men advanced cautiously but decisively. Eisenhower ensured the supply lines remained intact. Churchill monitored progress from London. Torch's success lay not only in landings and battles, but also in strategy, coordination, and the psychological impact on both the Vichy French and the Axis forces. The desert remained an unpredictable force, a silent observer of history unfolding. The suspense of Operation Torch was not limited to the battlefield. Every move, every decision carried immense weight. The Allies had made history, but every victory was provisional, every gain fragile. Rommel's counterattacks were inevitable, and the desert campaigns had only just begun. Torch was the opening act of a long, grueling struggle for North Africa. And as Allied soldiers gazed eastward toward Tunisia, with Rommel regrouping and the desert stretching endlessly, the world held its breath. Operation Torch had changed history, secured a foothold in North Africa, and set the stage for the Mediterranean campaign. But suspense lingered. Victory was not final. Triumph was temporary. And every new dawn in the desert promised challenges yet unseen. The war continued, and the stakes had never been higher.